Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Here for another video on the winter maintenance series for Tire Rack. And we're doing shock maintenance. This is not a complete shock rebuild, but it's about as close that you can get to it. We're not going to pull the lower seals and the lower shock cap. We're not going to pull the shafts out, but we're going to drain oil. We're going to clean it up and refill it. And the reason that I'm not replacing any of the inner seals or anything is because it just doesn't need them. I've already rebuilt 3 of the shocks on here. This is the last one. None of the other ones have needed them. We will take a look at the seals quickly, but it's not going to need new seals. These seals last for a long time, as long as you keep your shocks pretty well maintained. So the first thing we're going to do is drain our shock oil. And obviously, pretty straightforward process. You can drain it however you wish. I keep my used shock oil in just an old, I think it's a 1 liter bottle. But I just pour my oil into this bottle, drain my oil into this bottle. I suspend the shock upside down in the bottle for a little bit and really let that oil drain out. Let's see if I can get this on camera. My setup here is not really optimal for this. Move the rig out of the way. Yeah, it's not really focusing where I want it to focus, but essentially I've just got my shock suspended in this bottle. Ooh, can I do this? Yeah. Got the shock suspended in this bottle, just letting the oil drain out. We'll do that for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we will be back. Okay, we have drained all our oil out. Let's go ahead and cap off our bottle and put that away. I have spilled a bottle of shock oil before. Don't want to do that again. And the used oil, I don't do anything with it. Eventually I dispose of it. This just is easier for me to drain the shocks or drain the oil into and be able to empty it right away. So we're going to go ahead and kind of disassemble our shock. And you can see, very dirty, lots of oil down here. It does not matter how well your shocks are sealed. All shocks leak over time. These are Element Enduro shocks with a SE kit on them. This process will apply to pretty much all shocks. You know, there'll be slight variations depending on what your shock is, but this process will be valid for pretty much anything. And just the fact that all shocks leak, just keep that in mind. Some worse than others, obviously. You don't want your shocks just leaking all the time. You really don't want them leaking from the top, from the shock cap. But your seal down here, eventually all shocks will leak. Now, if it's leaking all of the oil out, that's a problem. But there is not a shock out there that will not leak oil over time. So just keep that in mind. Not going to pull my lower rod end off because I'm not going to need to. I'm not going to pull the shaft out. We have inspected our, I got a little bit more oil in there now that, let that drain out. May not have let it hang upside down long enough. It's important that you really get these drained. You want to get as much of the old fluid out as possible. So there is some validation in completely disassembling it, pulling the piston and the shock shaft out, and you know, letting it drain overnight, soaking your shock body in cleaning fluid if you wish, because you want to get as much of that old fluid out as possible. But again, for maintenance purposes, I don't do all that. I'll do that with a complete rebuild, which I usually do a complete rebuild about every 2 years. But for maintenance, this is going to be good enough. So let's go ahead and, ooh, that's on there tight. Go ahead and inspect our lower seals. Yeah, they're nice and clean. No tears or ripping or any signs of wear there, so we don't need to replace our seals in there. We'll just do some cleanup here. And we just want to make sure we didn't get any big chunks of dirt down in there. That looks good. Yeah, looks good. Clean these threads real good, and we will reinstall our cap. And again, if I do a complete rebuild, well, I used to would have done this with maintenance. So I talked in my previous video with drive shafts that an ultrasonic cleaner is a really good way to clean RC parts. And I have one, but it doesn't work. It's something broke in it, and I haven't had, well, I just haven't taken the time to try to work on it. And honestly, they're inexpensive enough to where even if I find out what's wrong with mine and can get parts for it to fix it, a replacement is like $100. It will probably cost me at least half of that just to fix it. So I just need to order a new one. I use a 6-liter ultrasonic cleaner. Is great for all of your RC stuff. It's great for if you're into firearms or knives or anything like that. It's great for cleaning that kind of stuff. It's great for cleaning jewelry, glasses. If you do one-to-one automotive work, you'll probably want a bigger one than that. You'll probably want, well, it just depends on what you get. But the 6-liter is like almost 2 gallons. It's a little bit under 2 gallons. And I find that to be more than sufficient for RC stuff. And you can get them for, like I said, right around $100 or less. Especially now with holiday sales and everything coming up, I'm willing to bet that there'll be some available for under $100. But it's a great option. And if mine was working, what we would be doing would be these springs and these lower caps and all these parts. We would drop those in the ultrasonic cleaner and run them through a cycle. I use Simple Green in mine, a Simple Green mixture, a 50-50. 50% Simple Green, 50% water. And I just mix it in a gallon jug. And pour that in the ultrasonic cleaner, run it through a cycle, and then drain that back out. I strain it through coffee filters and then put it back. And I reuse that solution usually like 10 times before I need to make new solutions. So like I said, the cleaner it's a little bit under 2 gallons. I run 1 gallon in it just for most things, and that works fine. But it's a great option, and I really need to replace mine or fix mine. So we've got all our components cleaned up. Now, one more thing to do before we fill with oil is on my Element shocks, I have the shock caps that have the drain plug in them. Not all, or the bleeder caps. Not all have this, so your shocks might be different, obviously. But again, like I said, the process is pretty much the same. These are factory team bodies. Essentially, what you can think of this as, this is an Element SE shock with an aluminum body instead of a plastic body. If you want to do this, all you need is the kit from an SE. They sell the plastic components because you need the spring cup and this lower shock cover, essentially. Yeah, you can build your little mini spring. I use mini T-springs, red in the back, pink up front for tire racks about 7 pounds. And in my Element shocks, whether they are these, whether they're factory SE shocks with the plastic bodies, whether they're kind of factory Element shocks with the full length spring, I use, I like 50 weight oil in mine. Oil weight is 50% preference, 50% performance. There's the 50 weight. I use TLR, but really any brand works pretty well. 50% performance, 50% preference. I like a thicker oil because it slows down the response of the shock. If it's a trail rig exclusively and I'm not doing a lot of crawling with it, I'll run a lighter weight oil. 30 to 40 weight usually gives that shock a little bit more response for when I'm driving faster on a trail. But for crawling, I like a heavier oil. I think that it helps it perform better. It also helps with like when you're crawling steep, it slows down the rate at which the front end suspension will unload, which helps keep you from pitching over backwards quickly. But anyway, 50 weight oil is my preference in Element shocks. I run 50 weight oil in probably the majority of my shocks. In Dravtex, I think I either run 40 or 50. I might run 40 in Dravtex. I need to see. I have it all written down what I run and where. But majority of my like shocks like this, I'm going to be running 50 weight. And like I said, then most trail builds, I will run 30 to 40 weight. So we're going to do initial fill. And then we're going to cycle that piston about halfway up. Bring it back down. We'll do that a couple times, and that's just to distribute the oil below the piston. And then we will come to the top with the piston, as close to the top as we can get. And we'll do the same thing a few times. And as you can see, I've got no bubbles forming. That's good. There's no air in there. And for these, being a bleeder cap, I don't have to worry as much about bubbles because I'm going to be able to get all the excess oil out through that bleeder hole. If you don't have bleeder caps, you need to just cycle your piston until you see bubbles come to the top, and then set your shock aside with the top open so the air can all kind of push out. That's shock holders are real useful for that. But with these, I don't need to do that. I'm going to put my top cack back on. And again, when you do a shock rebuild or even just shock maintenance, even if you're not rebuilding it, always inspect all your seals and everything. The O-ring around the top looked good, so no issues there. And now make sure I have one of my paper towels handy. And we're going to just go up until we see oil come out. Clean that up. And we'll do one more cycle. No oil came out, but I can see oil right there at the hole. That's perfect. And now we will just reinstall our bleeder screw. This is just a screw threading into plastic, so you don't want to go overly tight on those if you're using these. And just a tiny bit of pullback on that piston. That's what I like to see. Again, that's a little bit preference. Some people like to rebuild theirs with, I think they call it zero rebound or something like that. Oops, that's upside down. But my preference, and that feels how I want it to feel. So I'll reinstall that on the truck. All my other shocks, like I said, this is the last one. Rebuilt them all. But that's really all there is to it. Pretty simple process. Obviously, I assume most of you watching might have done this before, but if you're new to the hobby, you do need to do maintenance, and this is something you need to do. I do complete rebuilds every 2 years about, and I drive, and I'm talking specifically on Tire Rack. I drive this rig a lot. Now, if I had different shocks, I might do those rebuilds more often. It depends on the shock you're using. You know, axial shocks, if you're using axial shocks, they tend to leak more. And what happens when they leak, well, what happens with all shocks is dirt gets inside of the shock. Dirt's going to get on your shaft as that oil leaks out slowly over time. It's going to come down here and get on your spring cup. Dirt's going to get on there. It's going to get inside. I mean, you can see in our shock bottle, there is that black on the bottom. That's dirt that's collected inside of the shock oil. You can see how dirty the used shock oil is. So that's why you want to drain it really good, and that's why you want to refill it. But axial shocks, or a shock that leaks more, especially if you notice it's not leaking from the top and it's just leaking more out of your bottom cap, you want to rebuild those more often, or at least refill them more often and clean them out. For a rig that is driven a lot, I do a shock maintenance like I just did. I do that usually twice a year, and then I'll do a complete rebuild every 2 years where I pull out the O-rings and I replace all my seals. Regardless of how they look, I'll replace those every 2 years. And that's served me really well. That's always worked really well for me. So you don't need to do a complete rebuild all the time. You don't have to do maintenance all the time. If you don't drive your truck as much, you don't have to do maintenance as much. But, you know, all of that depends on how much you drive it, kind of the environment you drive it in. If you drive a lot in water and stuff, that water is going to ingress into your shock and affect your oil. And so, you know, kind of plan accordingly for that kind of stuff. But average timeline, do a basic maintenance every 6 months, complete rebuild every 1 to 2 years, just kind of depending on your preference and how you drive. Till next time, everybody, have a good one.